Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. First ancestor human emperor broke the move by force, but he could still not land for a huge bell rushed at him. Qin Mu came to his face and attacked the bell, all his punches and kicks landing on its walls. The bell shook, and its power grew fiercer and fiercer. It was sometimes tilted, sometimes facing down, sometimes up, and sometimes its mouth was aimed at first ancestor. Fifth ancestor's 5 thunder heaven-raising bell. First ancestor human emperor fell back repeatedly while Qin Mu speaking to him angrily through the ringing of the bell. How did second ancestor die? From old age. Boom. First ancestor human emperor's footsteps were messed up. How did third ancestor die? From old age. How did fourth ancestor die? From old age. Were the aptitudes or the comprehension of all the human emperors inferior to yours? If you couldn't do it, you should have imparted your technique to become a god and let them do it. Why did you let them die of old age? Qin Mu executed the divine arts of all 34 human emperors that he had learned in Fengju. The 34 human emperors had tested his aptitude and comprehension with them, but they hadn't imparted the full techniques, hoping that he would go to Hall of Human Emperors to receive their complete teaching. They taught Qin Mu roughly and didn't expect him to learn much. Yet their divine arts burst forth with astonishing power in his hands, making first ancestor retreat step by step. You clearly have the technique to become a god, so you should have taught them. Why didn't you teach them? What have they received from you? Other than a broken seal. Other than a bunch of responsibilities and burdens, they didn't receive anything. They couldn't learn your techniques and divine arts, yet they were still helping you carry the burden you couldn't lift by yourself, struggle and fight with the enemies you feared. Yet you destroy their hard work and even want to destroy their corpses. They were all ashamed to face you after they died, ashamed to not have succeeded. Yet you want to destroy everything they left behind. How do you have the face to call them useless, to call them incapable? Qin Mu unleashed his final move, but first ancestor suddenly stretched his hand to grab his fist and swung him up before smashing him ruthlessly against the ground. Qin Mu jumped up, and first ancestor counterattacked with fist skills, body movements, sword skills, and formation skills, each one of which was extremely marvelous. He easily broke all of Qin Mu's attacks and sent him into a defensive position. He was still incomparably strong, and the retreat moments ago seemed to have been just a trick for Qin Mu to weaken. Now he was going to destroy him completely, crushing his confidence and body together. His battle experience was incomparably abundant, and his corporeal body stayed in the most perfect state. His control of vital qi had reached an unbelievable realm. Qin Mu let loose his feelings and indulged himself in unleashing them in his divine arts, while first ancestor could control his feelings perfectly and didn't waste any excess energy to vent his emotions. Bang, bang, bang. Qin Mu received countless punches, kicks, and divine arts. Compared to the young true god's corporeal body that first ancestor had, he was still too tender. His true dragon overlord body couldn't be maintained anymore, and a finger from first ancestor human emperor that touched the heart of his brows broke it. Qin Mu was thrown high up before falling down like a tattered sack filled of grain in front of second ancestor's dilapidated straw hut. He tried to struggle to get up, but he couldn't rise no matter what. First ancestor human emperor walked over with a cold expression. He came to his side and said emotionlessly, "You talked so much, but was it useful? If you can, defeat me, otherwise, you can never carry the title of the human emperor. Once you take it, the enemies you'll have to face will be much stronger and much more ruthless than me." Qin Mu stared with eyes wide open as he walked to second ancestor's straw hut and lifted the man's skeleton. "Don't," Qin Mu crawled forward with difficulty till he could grab first ancestor's ankle. With a sob, he pleaded, "I beg you. Catcher." The skeleton of second ancestor shattered and fell to the ground. First ancestor lifted his feet and gave 2 stomps while saying coldly, "If you can't beat me, you will never beat them. This is the first time you had the chance to face me, so you still have 34 chances." Qin Mu's vision became blurry as his cheeks went ice cold. First Ancestor Human Emperor lifted him up and threw him onto the chest. He said coldly, "Every time you lose to me, I will destroy the skeleton of a human emperor. If you continue to lose, the skeletons of these failures will cease to exist. Go." The dragon Qin opened his mouth to roar at him, but his mouth was still sealed, he couldn't make a sound. First Ancestor Human Emperor looked at him, and the dragon Qin lowered his head. He brought the chest with Qin Mu back to where they had come from. "I'll kill you." Qin Mu's voice came from atop the chest. "I'll definitely kill you." First Ancestor Human Emperor trembled, but he didn't turn back. The dragon Qin then brought the chest with Qin Mu out of the ancient fragment of the celestial heavens. "I'm sorry." Be a thump. First Ancestor Human Emperor knelt down in front of Second Ancestor's straw hut with a cloud of dust. I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to destroy your remains, I'm sorry. I've already forgiven you." A ghost rose from the remains. It had a discernible Second Ancestor's figure that was smiling. "I've long forgiven you. I know your thoughts. You want to make him grow up faster because he is the overlord body, right? He can carry the burden we didn't manage to, right? I've forgiven you, so return to Fengju. They will also forgive you." In the dilapidated straw hut, skeletons raised their heads and looked silently at the kneeling First Ancestor Human Emperor. "We have all forgiven you." They looked at their ancestor. First Ancestor Human Emperor had not imparted the technique to become God to them, but he had imparted a spirit that couldn't be described with words, a kind of spirit that was undying and unwilling to give up. "I can't forgive myself." First Ancestor Human Emperor knelt on the ground, and his body slowly changed into a stone statue as his primordial spirit left for far away. The chest clattered as it ran, carrying Qin Mu over many mountains. In front of it, the dragon Qin looked ahead in alert, in case any strange beast in the wild tried to attack them. 2 days later, they came to border Dragon City. Sai Yunxiang and Hu Linga hurriedly took over Qin Mu's care. After a few days, he recovered and nursed himself back to full health. "I'll kill him." Qin Mu's eyes were lifeless as he sat on the head of a dragon pillar in the city. "I will definitely kill him. I will never forgive him," he told Ling Yuxiu, who had brought him up there. She looked at his dispirited self of the last couple days. She didn't know how to console him, so she thought to bring him to this place where they had played together back then in a hope to alleviate some of the dark clouds in his heart. "Father is summoning me back, he says he's sending me to West Earth." Ling Yuxiu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Even though West Earth has submitted to us, there's no power of the Imperial Court within it. Do you want to take a stroll with me in West Earth? Don't keep thinking about it by yourself. It's quite scary. Tell me about it, maybe I'll have an idea." Qin Mu looked at her with a stupefied expression, his eyes lacking any life. The stubborn beard hairs that he liked to pluck had already become a stubble after not being touched for a few days. He asked lifelessly, "How do I beat a true god?" Ling Yuxiu was stunned. Qin Mu laid down. "Go to West Earth. The Emperor told you to go to West Earth and crown Prince Yushu to the north, which was recently conquered, so if you rule West Earth better than he, you will gain the title of the Crown Princess. If you want it, I can help you. I have people in West Earth, but I can't go with you. I have to think about some things." Ling Yuxiu laid down beside him and placed her hands behind her head while looking blankly at the sky. "A few years ago when we were lying here together, everything was so carefree. I liked you, you also liked me, so why after we grew up, there are suddenly so many worries? How I miss those times." "It's probably because we grew up," Qin Mu said in a low voice after closing his eyes. Ling Yuxiu flipped over and looked at him from the side. She plucked a long hair from his beard and asked, "Are you still the original you?" Qin Mu was stunned. Xing'an said that a person's body changes completely every 7 years. Some 3-4 years have already passed, so I should only be left with half of me. Ling Yuxiu shuddered and plucked out a few more strands from his beard ruthlessly while saying angrily, "You're scaring me again. You will never become Xing'an." She tilted her head and pondered over it. "If you don't want me to go to West Earth, I can stay with you. Do you want to go?" Qin Mu asked. I want. Ling Yuxiu stood up and looked down at the mountains and rivers of great ruins from high above while speaking with high spirits. I want to become a female emperor and defeat my father. I want to make him know that I'm better and more powerful than all of his sons. A flicker of light flashed in Qin Mu's lifeless eyes. He felt inspiration surge through him after witnessing her motivated speech, and vigor returned to his body. It was as if he had come back to life. Ling Yuxiu sent Qin Mu to Heavenly Saint Academy before returning to the capital in 2 days, where she needed to wait for the emperor's arrangement. When the emperor wanted to open 4 new big academies to be the highest educational establishment second only to Imperial College, the Hall Masters, Elders, and Heavenly Kings of Heavenly Saint cult fought hard in the Imperial Court. Their labor gave fruit, and Heavenly Saint Academy was given permission to be set up. It used Granny Sai's manor, and after the battle with Xing'an, Granny Sai, mute, blind, and apothecary had stayed there. There were numerous members of Heavenly Saint cult in the Imperial Court. The highest ones were Imperial Preceptor and Duke Wei, while the lowest were soldiers and bailiffs everywhere, so Qin Mu didn't need to fight for the academy as others did it in his name. Granny Sai, mute, and blind had become directorates of Heavenly Saint Academy, teaching lessons once in a while. The other directorates were mostly the Hall Masters of Heavenly Saint cult. When Qin Mu came there, he was just in time for class, but he couldn't see anyone in the academy. There was only a bunch of flood dragons frolicking in the lake. When they saw Qin Mu, they were first stunned, then jumped up onto the shore in a frenzy. Qin Mu instantly knew that the situation was bad and turned to run. Weren't these flood dragons brought by Saint Xiong to be reared in Saint Arrival Mountain? Why have they come to Heavenly Saint Academy? Maha! 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 A bunch of flood dragons passed by the dragon Qilin and the chest. After a moment, Qin Mu was captured by the flood dragons. Afterward, he could only drag his exhausted body forward with over a dozen flood dragons rubbing their heads against him, their horns opening bloody wounds on his neck. Maha! The little flood dragons clung onto him with narrowed eyes as though they were sleepy. Qin Mu's body was all drenched as though he had been just fished out from the water. The dragon Qilin let out a long sigh of relief, and the flood dragons turned to look at him in unison. The dragon Qilin realized he was in trouble and turned to run in a hurry. Maha! 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 A bunch of flood dragons ran past the chest, and after a moment, Qin Mu saw the dragon Qilin barely able to crawl forward. His neck, body, and forelimbs were covered with flood dragons. Maha! The flood dragons rubbed against the dragon Qilin until this big fatty was bloody. Maha! The bunch of flood dragons raised their heads to look at the chest in curiosity. The chest had taken a step to follow behind Qin Mu, but at that moment, it realized that it was also in trouble and started running. The flood dragon slipped down from the dragon Qilin and rushed toward the chest while crying out in delight, Maha! 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 The dragon Qilin let out a sigh of relief and collapsed on the ground. After a moment, the chest ran back, making Qin Mu and the dragon Qilin stare at it with their eyes wide open. There were no flood dragons on the chest at all. Maha! The chest opened up and over a dozen dragon heads popped out. They cried out in unison, very happy. This sight was akin to a chest with daffodils of all colors showing their heads. The chest was rather pleased with and followed after them as if the flood dragons weren't heavy at all. Moore is back. When the bell rang for the end of class, Granny Sai walked out of a big hall. She saw Qin Mu and hurriedly came over to welcome him with a smile. Haven't seen you in a long while. You're truly a Grand Chancellor who asks others to work but does nothing himself. You threw all these scholars here and slipped away while making us help you look after them. Qin Mu hugged her tightly, and his tears flowed out uncontrollably. Granny. Stunned, Granny Sai smiled at him gently. You've suffered? How can a great cult master cry so miserably? You're still the Grand Chancellor of Heavenly Saint Academy, so stop crying. It's not good for the scholars to see you like this. Tell Granny what happened, and Granny will take justice for you. Qin Mu felt himself calming down and let go of her. He shook his head and said, What happened with these flood dragons? Weren't they sent to Saint Arrival Mountain? Lassie Xiong wanted to send them to Saint Arrival Mountain, but she disliked the fact that they ate spirit pills, and not even of one type. They were too costly, so she sent them back, Granny Sai explained. Lassie Xiong is really stingy, and she keeps a close watch on the purse of Heavenly Saint cult. However, it's good to put them in the academy. When scholars learn how to refine pills from your grandpa apothecary, the pills they refine are just fine to feed these flood dragons. Actually, these little ones are quite famous in the academy. When scholars want to paint dragons, refine dragon-shaped spirit weapons, or to cultivate dragon-based divine arts, they all need them. But what happened to you? Who provoked you? Cripple. Apothecary. Blind. Come over, Mua has been bullied by others. Bang. There was a loud boom, and Cripple suddenly appeared beside Qin Mu. He asked bewilderment, who bullied our Mua? Is he tired of living? Its first ancestor human emperor, a true god. Grandpa Cripple, Qin Mu said. Cripple shuddered and turned to leave. Blind grabbed hold of him and asked with a smile, Cripple, you're scared. Like hell I'm not scared. Cripple muttered. It's just that Qing and that scoundrel isn't even a true god, yet he beat us all up quite miserably. First ancestor human emperor is a real true god, so won't we just be seeking death by provoking him? Apothecary walked over and pondered over it. First ancestor human emperor? True god? Can it be settled with poison? Qin Mu shook his head. I want to defeat him fair and square, by fighting him on the same realm. I want to get rid of him by myself. Apothecary shuddered before shrugging his shoulders. My abilities are useless in this. Cripple sighed. I also don't have anything to offer. Where's Mute? He ran out a few days ago. Butcher held onto the shirt on his shoulder as he walked over while speaking in a booming voice. That fellow always slip away from time to time, going God knows where. Mua, how are the abilities of a true god? He's stronger than me in all fields. He runs faster than me, his strength is greater than mine, his spirit and body are one, his divine eyes surpass my divine eyes, the power of his fists is astonishing, and his paths, skills, and divine arts have merged into one with his corporeal body. Qin Mu's face dimmed. He has already entered the path in every field, so the only thing in which I'm stronger is magic power. Blind frowned and asked, Is stronger than my divine eyes? Qin Mu nodded gently. Butcher, who wasn't afraid of the heaven and earth, also locked his eyebrows in a frown. After a moment, he asked, My knife skills were easily broken by him. Death walked over. What about the painting path? No chance to execute. What about Heavenly Saint Cult's divine arts? Granny Sai asked. Qin Mu shook his head. Everyone frowned together. Have you tried running? Cripple asked with some nervousness. He caught up with me. Poison. Forget it, forget it. Apothecary waved his hands and said, I've confidence in poisoning a god, but to poison a true god with no weakness at all, I don't think I could do that. Qin Mu smiled at them. You guys don't need to worry about my matter. I've thought over it quietly for the last couple days, and I've realized something. Even though he looks invincible, he escaped from the battlefield back then, which means that there are people who are stronger than him. He isn't invincible, so I can definitely find a way to surpass him. Granny Sai smiled and said, It's rare for you to come back, so stay at Heavenly Saint Academy for some time. Let us help you think of a solution. Qin Mu nodded and went to put down his luggage. Granny Sai, Butcher, Blind, and the rest gathered together and looked at his back. Butcher frowned and said, This is the first time Qin Mu has lost his confidence. He was not like this in the past, always so full of trust in himself, but now, he shook his head. Blind narrowed his eyes. True gods, are they really so terrifying? Surpassing my divine eyes? I don't really believe. We should train him while he's here. Deaf suddenly said. To learn without thinking is blindness, to think without learning is idleness. He is currently at the stage of learning and thinking. Mua's fight with First Ancestor Human Emperor is not just a battle of cultivation, but also a battle of Tao heart. If he walks out of it, it'll probably be a huge improvement in the cultivation of his Tao heart. If he can't do it, I'm afraid the Overlord body will become a useless body. Let's train him well, so he doesn't become useless. Everyone nodded. After Qin Mu settled down, it was as if he had returned to disabled elderly village. Butcher, blind, deaf, cripple, and Granny Sai would call him over from time to time and feed him moves, flipping the heaven and earth in the academy with the fights. Most of the scholars in the academy were from Heavenly Saint cult, while others had come from the other academies in the world to seek knowledge here. The next few days were an eye-opener for them as they witnessed the legendary abilities of all the directorates. After a few days, Granny Sai and the rest all frowned. Qin Mu was still fearful and nervous, not daring to attack, which resulted in him being frequently beaten up by them. The worst part was that even though those few times when he attacked his moves were incomparably exquisite, he would execute them halfway and stop. Butcher was furious and beat him up while scolding sternly, "Why did you not finish your move?" Qin Mu didn't retaliate and just shook his head. "It's all wrong. You have to finish it even if it's wrong." Granny Sai hurriedly pulled Butcher away and said angrily, "He isn't in the right state, so stop beating him. What if you make him dumb like that?" Deaf nodded and said, "There is too much stuff accumulated in his brain and he thinks too much. He has burrowed himself into a dead end and can't get out, so you won't gain anything by beating him up like this. Once he finds his way out, he will become a great master." Butcher stared at them. What if he doesn't find his way out? Everyone was silent. "Mua, you won't learn anything in the academy, so it's better for you to take a stroll and drive away your cares," Granny Sai said. Qin Mu nodded and packed his luggage, leaving the academy with a muddled head. Cripple followed him for a period of time, but only saw Qin Mu walking randomly. When he saw that he wasn't in any danger, he calmed down and returned to the academy. One day, Qin Mu came to Surging River and sat down on its shore. Almost instantly, he heard a voice from behind him. "Qin brat." Qin Mu turned around and saw a luxuriously dressed youth standing behind him with a look of terror, ready to escape any time. "Oh, it's Grandmaster." Qin Mu turned back and continued to look at the river. Pan Gong So propped himself up since his one leg was a deer leg. He had planned to escape the moment the youth attacked him, but when he saw him continuing to sit beside the shore without any intention to attack him, his guts grew. He got closer and asked, "Cult Master Qin seems to have some troubles? You and I are old friends, so why don't you tell me about what's eating at you? Maybe I can help you solve your problem." Qin Mu was bored to death and threw a stone into the river. "I'm thinking about how I can defeat a true god on the same realm, but I can't find the answer. Grandmaster, can you teach me?" Pan Gong So's eyes lit up, and he got closer and closer. He said with a smile, "I see. You must be very troubled now, right? You feel you're very useless, right? That life is uninteresting? In that case, what's the point of living? Let me help you finish things, hee hee." Whoosh! The river churned, and Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's huge head rose up high like a mountain. His whiskers hung in the air beside Pan Gong So. The youth's body turned stiff, and his face turned yellow. He immediately turned to leave. "Sorry for disturbing, farewell." Once he said that, he vanished without a trace. Dragon-Rearing Sovereign watching him leave and shook his head. "This brat is even more slippery than a loach. Your Majesty, I can't solve your problems. Even though I'm a god, I don't have the power to get rid of a true god." Qin Mu sighed while on the mountain behind him Godby she swished his tail in annoyance. "I also don't have the ability. Your Majesty, can I change the mountain? This one is too small, and my temple is only this high. It can't even fit my hoof." Qin Mu got up and rode the dragon Chilean away. "Human Emperor Qin, you've come to my little jade capital to proceed with 5 Qi breakthrough and 6 directions breakthrough." Hermit Qin Yu hurriedly came to welcome him with a smile. "It's been a while since my little jade capital had any visitors. Hall of 5 Qi and Hall of 6 Directions have been waiting for the arrival of Human Emperor." "That's right, there's still a thing I haven't told you about. A few months ago, the stone statue of your first ancestor human emperor seemed to have come back to life. He left Little Jade Capital, but I've no idea where he went. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched, and he said, I met him. Astonishment showed up on Hermit Qin Yu's face. You met him? In that case, do you also know that the stone statue of Saint Woodcutter has also come back to life and left Little Jade Capital? Saint Woodcutter's stone statue has revived. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently, and he hurriedly asked, where is he? He left as well. If you were a few days earlier, you could have met him. Saint Woodcutter had left then with his axe. When he awakened, I jumped in shock, wondering why such two existences had woken up one after another, Hermit Qin Yu said. As for where he went, I do not know. Qin Mu composed himself. First ancestor human emperor of Hall of Human Emperors and Saint Woodcutter of Heavenly Saint cult waking up one after another was indeed strange. Why did it happen? Where could Saint Woodcutter go? Heavenly Saint cult wasn't founded by him, but by founding master. Saint Woodcutter had only wanted to leave behind his legacy, so it was doubtful he'd go to Heavenly Saint cult. But besides it, where else could he go? Wang Muren and the rest were not in Little Jade Capital since they had gone to Border Dragon City, so there were only some old immortals left on the mountain. Hermit Qin Yu examined Qin Mu and said, Human Emperor Qin's state doesn't seem right. Do you really want to enter Hall of 5 Qi? You look out of sorts now. Qin Mu shook his head and said, may I ask Hermit Qin Yu to open Hall of 5 Qi, Hall of 6 Directions and Hall of 7 Stars? I want to go in and take a look. Hermit Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. He wasn't too at ease with the youth's current state. If Human Emperor is insistent on entering, my Little Jade Capital will naturally do its best to satisfy you. However, your state doesn't seem right now, and barging in by force will not be good for you. You only have one chance after all. Passing 5 Qi breakthrough, 6 Directions breakthrough, and 7 Stars breakthrough would definitely increase your foundation drastically, so don't waste this chance and come only when in your best state. Qin Mu smiled at him. I just want to go in and take a look, not to challenge. Hermit Qin Yu was helpless. Please follow me. He led Qin Mu to Hall of 3 Eons while saying, you pass through 3 Eons breakthrough, so after you enter the hall, you will automatically enter Hall of 5 Qi. If you pass through it, you will enter Hall of 6 Directions. After it will be Hall of 7 Stars. You aren't in the right state, so to prevent you from making any mistakes, I will host this personally. Qin Mu gave his thanks and walked into Hall of 3 Eons. Before he could even steady himself, the scenery in front of his eyes changed, and 5 huge stars rose in the sky, shining in gold, green, blue, red, and yellow colors. Each one of them had a palace on it. Qin Mu focused himself, and besides the 5 stars, he could also see the sun and moon in the sky. However, they were extremely far from him, as though there was a world separating them. The 5 stars in the sky were huge beyond belief, but they were at different distances, some far and some close. In the 5 sacred halls, gods who corresponded to the 5-star sovereigns stood up. Suddenly, Hermit Qin Yu's voice came from afar. Senior Sister Ying He, let me replace you for this stage. A red-haired god with a snake's body stood up and transformed into a flowing light that left into the distance. Another ray of bright light flew over and landed in that sacred hall. Hermit Qin Yu changed into a red-haired god with a snake's body and said, Human Emperor Qin, all of 5 Qi is separated into metal, wood, water, fire, and earth breakthroughs. Which element will you choose? Qin Mu shook his head. My trip here was to take a look at the divine treasures of a true god, so may Hermit Qin Yu make things easy for me. Hermit Qin Yu frowned, and so did the other 4 immortals. One of them said, the founder of my Little Jade Capital left behind Hall of 3 Eons to teach the later generations and fill in what they lack. It isn't for us to observe his divine treasures. An elderly woman frowned. The people who've come in to challenge here had never made such a weird request before. Senior Brother Qin Yu. Human Emperor Qin is not an outsider. Hermit Qin Yu pondered over it before saying, he shared the method to become God with the world and we have all received his grace. Little jade capital should satisfy his request. Besides, the ancestor who left the test also was surnamed Qin. The other 4 old immortals spoke no more. Human Emperor Qin, you only have one chance to challenge us, and if you succeed, you would receive the divine vitality of the 5 Qi. This could supplement the deficiency of your 5 elements divine treasures cultivation. Are you sure you just want to take a look at the divine treasures of this god? Qin Mu bowed. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, but teach a man to fish and you will feed him for a lifetime. I'm willing to give up the divine vitality of the 5 Qi. Hermit Qin Yu broke into a smile. All right. I thought Human Emperor Qin's frame of mind was unstable and worried that you had lost your wisdom and would lose the challenge, but your boldness makes me admire you. In that case, come up. His green light fell to the ground, and Qin Mu was raised up by it, landing on the water element star. The red-haired god with a snake body that Hermit Qin Yu had transformed into led him into his sacred hall. Human Emperor Qin, feel free to look. It will depend on your abilities how much you will be able to comprehend. Qin Mu gave his thanks and examined everything in detail. He observed the rune markings on the 4 walls of the sacred hall, paying close attention to them. There were sacred halls on all 5 stars in 5 elements divine treasure, and they were all naturally formed. Every divine arts practitioner that cultivated to this realm would refine 5 stars in their 5 elements divine treasure. The 5 stars would correspond to 5 elements. The stars were naturally formed and the palace halls on the stars were also naturally formed. However, different techniques would form different rune markings. They would then combine with the vital qi and become the gods in the palace halls. In the 5 elements divine treasure of any divine arts practitioner, when the gods of the 5 elements breathed out their vital qi, its attributes changed. That was why such a name as 5 qi was created. Qin Mu's 5 elements divine treasure has already been cultivated to the extremes, so it was difficult for him to take any more steps further. However, the fight between him and First Ancestor had made him realize that his limit wasn't everyone's limit. He observed in detail, and Hermit Qin Yu was very patient. He kept waiting for him. It was hard to say how long had passed when Qin Mu closed his eyes, having studied enough. When he opened them, he looked toward Hermit Qin Yu. I have an unreasonable request. Hermit Qin Yu understood and changed into a ray of bright light that left. Only Qin Mu was then alone in the sacred hall. The rune markings on the walls instantly lit up, and his body changed against his will, turning him into a red-haired god with a snake's body. After a long time, Qin Mu dispersed the god form and left the sacred hall. He went to another star and entered another palace hall, observing the rune markings there. After a dozen days, he finally walked finished with all 5 stars and went to 6 directions divine treasure. He spent a dozen days more there before entering 7 stars divine treasure. Many more days passed. After that, he couldn't proceed anymore since celestial being divine treasure and life and death divine treasure had no one to host them. When Qin Mu walked out of Hall of 3 Eons looking a little haggard and with a stubby beard, Hermit Qin Yu knew that the youth had not been sleeping the whole time. He felt slightly pained for him and asked, has Human Emperor Qin found what he wanted? Qin Mu was in good spirits. The improvement in his 5 elements, 6 directions, and 7 stars divine treasures had given him a lot, renewing his confidence. He gave his thanks. Much thanks, Immortal. As for whether I found what I wanted, I still need to confirm it. May I ask, comparing the founder of Little Jade Capital to First Ancestor Human Emperor of Hall of Human Emperors, whose abilities were better? I can't really say whose abilities were stronger, since both of them are seniors who had become true gods 20,000 years ago and I've never seen them fight before. However, Little Jade Capital has a few old scrolls that speak about the ancestor once going to find the first-generation human emperor. He had wanted to make him leave a mountain, but he returned in low spirits from a defeat and had to nurse his injuries for several months. The scroll stated that the first-generation human emperor had used immense magic power to move the fragment of founding Emperor Celestial Heavens and that his abilities were extremely strong. Hall of Human Emperors is 100 times bigger than Little Jade Capital and is known to be terrifying. I think that the ancestors of Little Jade Capital had all went out of their way to protect themselves while the first-generation human emperor had brought countless people from various races to battlefields all the time. From that, it's not that hard to make a guess whose abilities were stronger. Qin Mu's face turned ashen. After a long time, he bowed. I understand, much thanks, Immortal. Hermit Qin Mu frowned and felt that the youth's state of mind was even worse than when he had come. You haven't been sleeping for a month and more, so you should take a rest first. Qin Mu agreed. Hermit Qin Mu arranged a room for him and let him sleep. Qin Mu woke up after a dozen more days, but his complexion still wasn't good. He insisted on leaving, and Hermit Qin Mu didn't keep him back any longer. If Saint Woodcutter comes back, where do I go to inform you? I'll have to trouble Immortal to go to Border Dragon City. I might be there. Hermit Qin Mu saw him off while thinking in bewilderment. Back when human Emperor Qin came here for the first time, he was so full of metal, so why has he become so dispirited? Qin Mu sat on the chest that brought him away. He poured a full basin of Scarlet Fire Spirit pills mixed with Fire Element Divine Vitality pill to the delighted and surprised yet nervous Dragon Qilin. Why has Cult Master become so kind today? Is it because I starved for over a month, or is he preparing to put me on the table? No matter what, I need to eat first. After he finished the basin, Qin Mu poured him another one. The Dragon Qilin hesitated for a moment while looking down at the basin full of spirit pills. He suddenly began to cry miserably as he lowered his head to eat more. Qin Mu looked at him in bewilderment. What are you crying for? It's good to die as a full ghost, the Dragon Qilin said through a full mouth while wiping his eyes. At least I can head on my way with a full stomach. Cult Master, make it a swift one. Qin Mu shook his head and said, I've starved you these few days, so I'm paying you back. I ain't going to kill you for your meat. The Dragon Qilin was delighted and ate all the spirit pills in the basin. When they passed by a city, Qin Mu stopped to buy some medicinal ingredients. He went to several cities and refined numerous Scarlet Fire Spirit pills and Fire Element's Divine Vitality pill, which he stuffed into the chest. The Dragon Qilin was ineffably moved by such actions. Cult Master is really good to me. Qin Mu bought some black iron and black gold to forge strange spirit weapons on the way. The Dragon Qilin couldn't understand what he wanted to do. He only saw some of the things refined by Qin Mu were flags, some were sacrificial altars, and some were tools of calculation like 8 trigrams, taiji, abacus, and 5-element talismans. After a few days, they came to Border Dragon City, but did not enter it. Qin Mu used 8 trigrams platform, taiji diagram, and numerous other tools of calculation to calculate while looking around his surroundings. He found the terrain and used a ruler to measure a nearby mountain. He then recorded a series of runes on a paper. The Dragon Qilin went over to take a look, but he couldn't understand anything. There was no end to the calculations even when the sun was about to descend and the darkness about to come. When Qin Mu finally finished, he set up a sacrificial altar with flags all around it. He then stood upon it after chasing the Dragon Qilin and the chest away. Cult Master, what is this for? The Dragon Qilin asked from beside the chest. Qin Mu executed the flags and looked at the darkness in the surroundings. Another world soon appeared and overlapped with great ruins. In that world, countless devils moved around with their smoke-like bodies as they came from huge space holes. In Qin Mu's eyes, the people of the other world were fighting back against those devils. He was faced with a large-scale battlefield that was incomparably vast. Fatty Dragon, I've prepared enough spirit pills to last you a long time. Just stay with the chest for a few days. I plan to. His gaze was fixated on a running devil general on the battlefield. On the sacrificial altar, countless runes lit up, and the teleportation flags rustled. Go to another world. Boom! A loud explosion rang out, and Qin Mu and the teleportation flags instantly vanished. Instead, on the sacrificial altar, a devil general that was tall and sturdy suddenly appeared and looked around in a daze. Toot, toot! The sound of the bugle horn was long, and countless flags fluttered, swirling to form a huge circle. Qin Mu suddenly appeared in the middle of a vast battlefield where countless soldiers of the devil army were rushing forward. They swept him along in their charge. In front of them was an incomparably majestic city with huge ships flying in the sky. God stood upright there with divine weapons in their hands and swept up countless soldiers and horses with each strike. Qin Mu had used the spell of sacrifice and teleportation formation to come to the world of the girl in the darkness. This video will end here.